I'm really curious what happens when I remove the layers that block my light and all these pains and wounds. And when the light that lives in me, I'm really curious what that looks like when totally unleashed, what I can do in the world, how I can be with others. I'm eager to learn. So my hope is to learn and grow and evolve and share my gifts with the world. For the world itself, my hope is that we can learn how to live together. We're in the most exciting time in human history when there's enough pressure on an organism, it can evolve, and our organism is being pressured to evolve. And so I hope that we can evolve to care for each other, to care for the planet, to not be limited by our lenses of perception. And while I'm alive, I hope I can ease some suffering on the world, make it a better place. Being in this wonderful nature that I'm in, it's going to take some work to maintain that. I can't just live in a silo. I want to make a dent.
Welcome to the Mindform podcast, where we delve into the minds of some of the most interesting people on the planet, discuss psychology, philosophy, and personal growth, and share the wisdom we uncover with you. Join us as we explore the art of forming our minds. Here's your host, Frank Lawton.
Kia ora from New Zealand. This is the Mindform podcast. Here we share real conversations with earnest seekers of the good life, uncovering gems of wisdom every time. Each guest is a unique expert in philosophy, psychology, or personal growth, and all are members of the psychotecture collective and training platform Mindform. This week I'm privileged to be speaking with Ed Zaydelman. Ed still lives, and he's been in Costa Rica for over 20 years, supporting people and taking a leap into alternative ways of living with the right tools, resources, and expertise. He now shares information on how to build the future now. So it's new ways of living in community and with nature. He investigates the practicality and the psychology of restructuring the way we live and relate. He does that as part of the nonprofit Leap Forward and on a Substack called Live the Possibility. Yes, I'm real keen to get into this conversation. I'm making a little bit of a shift like that in my life as well moving forward. So I actually have a lot to learn. Welcome to the podcast, Ed.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
All good. So let's just start with a bit about you and how this journey all started for you. What are some of the key experiences and learnings that led you to what you do now in your work with intentional and eco communities?
Yeah, so I grew up in New York City, the son of Ukrainian immigrants, and my dad left the Soviet Union because things were changing. Freedoms were disappearing, and like many people came to the U.S. In the 70s, back in the day. And so, yeah, there was a point in my life, in his life, where we also had some changes happen kind of later. And after coming from Russia to build our whole family a life in the US, when I got out of college, I was like, I'm out of here. And I worked as a nightclub promoter in high school during really big events. So I was always fascinated about gathering community, around 4,000 or 5,000 people, but it was very unconscious at the time. We were young, drinking, partying, whatever. And I went on after that in college to work at the Burning Man organization with the
Oh,
two
sure.
founders,
Yeah.
Larry and Marion. I was like a PhD in events in an awkward way. It's not in a university, but I learned so much about how experiences are created and how community forms without borders, in a way, and what's really possible in the imagination. And that same year where I started going to Burning Man, my grandpa got pancreatic cancer. Um, my whole family shifted into, we started to eat organic. My dad started to go to top doctors with my mom to clean stuff out of their body and begin to consider their health in now what's called functional medicine and biohacking and all these words. But, back then it was just getting really good analysis done and seeing like, holy crap, my mercury as a young guy was through the roof to the level of like hazard just from living in New York in a city
Right.
that's poisonous, eating a bit of fish, tuna fish, whatever. But anyway, we started cleaning our bodies out as a family, and I didn't know how good I could feel. And my dad, and he said, look, what if we did this? And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, look, you're going to like the events and etc. I started shifting into going to retreats and masterminds and entrepreneur events. The family's into longevity. He quit his job that year. I quit 2 years before that, nightlife, and got into Burning Man. It's not really a job. It was a part of my life, at the time. For me, I don't mean in general, it's not a job, but I got what I needed. And my dad said, let's think about something else. And, we both said, look, let's think about maybe a place where people could live this way with clean food, clean water. It's really hard to live. Especially if you're cleaning your body out of things. You need juicing, you need a lot of things that I'm not going to do on it, or it's very expensive. So we looked at where could we create a place where people could live in a healthy way, a community, not necessarily an eco village yet,
Mm.
and where could we create a place where people could come and visit. And that's what I was more into, retreats and events where they can have an aha experience and transform. And so we set out on a journey 20 years ago to look all over the world for what country could fit the healthiest criteria
Wow.
for living. And personally, because we're from the US, we wanted to not be that far from family. So there are many countries that fit the bill. But we chose Costa Rica because it was a stable democracy in highest literacy rates, no army, clean food, and it's very close for a lot of countries to access. So for us, it was the canvas to paint on, and maybe I went in too starry-eyed, but my dad quit his job, I quit my job, and we went off to build a village and a retreat center. And for a while, it went well until it didn't, and everything came crashing down. I had a marriage, the retreat center, all this stuff that took me to Costa Rica that took years to build. And I'm fast forwarding a story because we have a limited time. But I did the thing I thought like Spirit told me. And I was like, yeah, I'm building this business and the retreats, and we're going to regenerate the world and help people get healthy. And I was running myself into the ground, my marriage into the ground. Um, and later I found a hotel brand that helped partner with us in a time where financially I couldn't sustain the business anymore energetically. So, even though it's part of my story, it is part of what I do now that when people come to me and they said, Ed, like, we have a dream of building the new world. And I'm like, you just had a child and your wife is kicking me under the table. So go build yourself a house in a beautiful eco village. Maybe wait a little bit, but not always, but I really try to get people to see how slow this process can be
Mm.
of, and how slow it should be if you're doing it in integrity with nature. It's not a thing to rush or do for investors, or it's not a startup that you're going to get wealthy quick. Maybe if money is the goal, like work a bit longer, but I didn't know any of that, and we built a retreat center, literally cooking for people from behind a two-burner stove and having 40-person retreats and people hugging us. And I was in a period of, yeah, deep personal growth. So every teacher that taught something at our place, I wanted to support. And so the center wasn't because I liked building retreat centers. I just really love learning with teachers live in person,
Mm, mm,
or
mm.
facilitators or whoever they are. Um, and so that was it. And that became a big learning experience where we built this place and ran it. And at the point where my life hit kind of the dark night of the soul and I couldn't do it anymore, um, I started to work for a hotel group that took over the property and liberated me to kind of, yeah, work with other people, not be just this solo entrepreneur. And yeah, I did that up until COVID, and then went on just to consult people because there was a deep desire for people to build community and healing centers, and people started calling me, and I just started helping them in a like an official way. But yeah, that's my
Awesome.
story. And
Yeah, big story. So that's what you do now, right? It's primarily it's consultation. It's you're working with people who are trying to do this for themselves, and you have the story and the connections, and you're making sure they don't crumble to pieces like you did, kind of thing.
kind of, I say kind of for two reasons. One is really I coach people, like all these people who are doing these projects are in massive like life transformation moments,
Mm,
just as I was. So most of my work is just being a human to talk to.
right.
Yeah, I help them design and choose architects and create a vision and a strategy and execute that. But at the end of the day, I'm talking to people on the phone about their lives and families and schedules. And So it's kind of like a weird Trojan horse because once I've worked with someone for a while, they're like, "You're not who you say you are. You really just care about us and want us to do the best thing for us." And I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And the reason being is because my other half of my life is in Leap Forward. They kind of intertwine now, but most of my time is spent on personal development, interpersonal development, and kind of that thing, if I want to change the world, I got to change myself.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I work pretty much half time with a nonprofit that does that work, which is, yeah, called Leap Forward that you mentioned. And it's a community that's been around 12 years actively, that meets online and in person, but from all over the world, all socioeconomic backgrounds. And yeah, we work on projects together and see where we rub and where we argue, help each other rewire our programming through the best in neuro, psych, social, evolutionary biology tools, to actively take our rewiring on with each other. And that's where community fits in because my why has always been, who am I? Why am I here? And what does community look like in the world? Why are we here? Um, so that's the other side of my life, is practicing that. Because I've been talking about it for God knows too long. Now
Not
I'm
too
trying to
long.
practice.
Not too long. Ryan in the chat, Mindform's founder says definitely up our alley, and I was just thinking that sounds familiar. I I really want to get into both of these, but just to kind of help me and the listener, I guess get at what you're saying. You know, there's a lot of exciting language there, but maybe just help paint the picture. You know, what does this look like?
Sure.
What's the dream? What's the vision? Maybe we'll start with the community stuff. So with people who are coming to you, with people who you're working with, what's the vision? What are they trying to achieve? And what yeah, what how does that end up looking? I'm sure there's often a disconnect there between
Sure.
those initial intentions and what comes through, but yeah, where are people
Yeah.
going with that?
And there's that old adage, I think it's in marketing, like give people what they need, not what they want.
Mm,
And in this case, most people, no matter who it is, whether it's some, wealthy billionaire company or a family, most people are sensing the world is changing and they want water and land security and they want to
right.
experiment with living in community. They've heard about eco villages, they've heard about plant medicine, some have done it, but these are people who are in different stages of wanting to look at what is the alternative. And some of my clients, most of them are in Costa Rica, but I have ones who are in upstate New York, Mexico. I've worked in Europe, because it's the same process essentially of, excuse me, really honing in on what is your vision for your life, and what's your vision for your project. And once we can really nail that vision down, then we can see what they want to do. If it's crystal clear, do you want to build an eco village, a neighborhood? You want to build a retreat center? Most want to do both, where they see this vision for a healing center, a school. And so we map that all out painstakingly and really just look at what's there and start to synergize that both spiritually and on paper, and see what does that look like? How much does that cost to build? How much land do you really need? I see sometimes people, for the thing that they want, are looking for these massive properties that they don't need necessarily or can't afford. And they're like, oh man, but my buddy just showed me this 1,000 acres. And I'm like, you're going to be under so much pressure. You don't need 1,000 acres. You need 100 for your video. I'm just an example. So I really try to be their sounding board and tease it out and see what it is they want to do, at what scale, and if they really even need to do it. Because at the end of a few months, we see a project and we see if it makes sense. And I would say 50 to 60% of the people I work with, I kind of talk off of a ledge into a simpler. I said, come visit Costa Rica, spend a year living here, live in different parts of the country. You're
Hmm.
dead set on doing it in the north, but man, this is like the rest of your life. You're building a village for your kids and family and whatever. So yeah, I really slow people down because I studied regenerative development at the Regenesis Institute. And long story short, everything is about going super slow and asking the right questions
Right.
to yourself, to the people in the communities you're working in or impacting. So yeah, my job is to be their Sherpa and show them the map that they're going to take and make sure they want to climb K2. If not, there's a lot of other routes they could take. Um, yeah, and very often when it's families, couples, co-founders, a lot of this is where Leap Forward also comes in, is a lot of problems happen between people, not in the projects. We don't have like cranes falling over at the eco villages. We do have two founders like having a harsh split, or an
Mm,
investor being a horrible match for a beautiful heart-led project, and
right.
it's not working out. So if I can help them see that the way I didn't see some of those things, it's a really important thing and service for me to share from all the areas that I've learned, or taking on financing, like, hey, we're going to pay the property over time. And I'm like, you're going to be so stressed for the next X years. Don't do that. Buy something you can afford if you're going to do a project. Every dollar has a DNA. Really watching where capital comes from is critical. So we look at all of that. And for people who build the places or are buying places sometimes that are operational, as a company, we help them set up all the operational systems they need and staffing and things to make operating not a nightmare. Because it could turn like what's a fun dream on a Miro board or in your journal, it could turn that into a nightmare because you own like a restaurant essentially. You own a business that's open. And so I really like if someone wants to do a retreat center or a hospitality business, longevity center, whatever, I just want to make sure that they're in a way that they're staffed, that they're doing the job that they're meant to do, not 100 things and they feel burnt out because that's not success for me.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, we really go from the life cycle because my background is building and operating retreat centers and throwing the actual events. So um, we help a lot of people starting projects ground up, but there are people who we help in who have acquired existing assets or running places. Just get the place running smoother so that people could enjoy the new earth or whatever it's called. Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, we got a good. I was thinking about this too. We got a good message in the chat here. Every
Yeah.
dollar has a DNA, right? Like it. It's very. I imagine it's something people go in blind to. It's like, right, okay, I need capital. I need capital, and this is great. I can make money from this and live the dream. But there's a lot that can go wrong. And where's that money coming from? And what are the values of the people who are providing that money? Are they your values? How can needing to sustain those financial structures that you've got at the start? How can that lead you astray from what you're trying to do? Yeah. What are some of the other, I suppose, questions that people often aren't asking when they come into this that you're trying to prompt them to ask?
Yeah. Um, One question that somebody asked me the other day, which I'm surprised more people don't ask me because it's my job, is are retreat centers profitable?
Yeah, yeah.
Right? So I had a guy who told me he really wants to have an impact with his dollar. He did, I mean, what most people dream of doing financially in their lives, he did, and he said, hey, I want to, my daughter's into this and into wellness. I want to have an impact and buy like an existing lodge. And we looked at the criteria, we found a place. And when I did the numbers, he was like, Ed, this is making like 7% a year. Like I have like treasury notes that make more than that, and I said, well, man, what do you expect? You said you wanted to buy a heritage asset, something beautiful. It's like owning like a bird sanctuary in South Africa. Like these are unique places. These aren't money generators. If you want to generate a ton of money, ton of places to do it. Wall Street, I wouldn't recommend starting a retreat center. That being said, I have clients I know and mentors of mine who have made a lot of money in the retreat space, but it's a lot of work. Most people don't ask how long it takes. It takes 3 to 5 years just to get to stability of a property like that. And the
Mm,
system's running and the group's already consistent, that you're not worried about marketing. So people don't realize often also how long it's going to take, how much it's going to cost, that they're not going to make as much. So that's one of the big things, I think. Some of the biggest things when they look at these kind of businesses is that if you really want to make an impact, make an impact. Doesn't mean that the business can't be profitable. It can be, but understand that you're in a thing that is a labor of love. And same with eco villages.
yeah.
Like I interview my friends who have built eco villages. It's they're not like rolling in the cash right now. They've done okay, but it's a lot and a lot of lessons. So be really mindful financially, be very careful. as much as you can. Be careful and be smart financially. I have to reel people back in a lot. They're like, "What do you mean? We needed the 3 saunas and the 2 cold plunges, Ed." And I'm like, "No, you didn't. You really didn't." And so, yeah. Just the other thing, Frank, is I think, when I looked at Mindform and I look at what you guys talk about, I think, for me, the one major question that nobody asked, except when I met Ronit, the founder of Leap Forward, like it's kind of like a crazy moment too. Yeah, we could get a little edgy, but they came to Costa Rica as a group, Leap Forward. I met her
Oh, okay. Cool.
at a nonprofit event. And they were looking at eco villages, and they had studied every eco village in the world, Damanhor, Finhorn, like literally went through the gamut. And the point was that people here were building the physical structure of eco villages, the fruit trees, the gate, but the invisible structures, they're not in place. It takes
Mm,
a long time to build
the
relationship and
values, the
community.
communication skills. Yeah, yeah,
So that's the big
yeah.
challenge too. It's not like, can we pull it off from a construction perspective? Yes, but human beings are evolving to learn how to cooperate. That's why Leap Forward interested me so much, because that's where I see human evolution in a big way. I'd love to hear more about the ideals.
Yeah,
I'm
let's
just looking
paint.
at the chat.
Yeah, let's paint a
Yeah.
picture of an eco village. That's the question for Ryan. I think I've got I've done the googling. I'm like, oh wow, look at this eco village over here. That's cool. But
Yeah.
what is an eco village? What is an eco village?
Well, this is great. I love how slow we're going in this sense. So I don't know. Okay. I've like read a dozen articles, but I know there's this thing that happens when a group of people buy a piece of land, figure out a structure to divide their dwellings, lots, or etc.
Hmm.
And most of them involve, similar to many of the countries around the world, they're gated communities where you buy
Okay.
a plot of land or you buy a house, and to different extents, they're eco. Some are, some aren't, some look eco, but meaning the ones that I know here that I've studied and my friends have started, like Alegria, La Ecovia, Holos. I could put some links to these later. Kinkara. These are basically projects where families who have ideals and values that match have moved in, and they have communal gardens, and they have a lot of the best practices done. It's cool to see examples of massive biodigesters of methane and off-grid stuff and etc. But it's taken a while, and in one of the first ones I've studied, like 30 or 40% of the families moved out in the beginning, and new families moved in because they didn't vibe. And I was at one of the homeowners associations meetings to see what is an eco village. This question, like, what are the people? And man, this argument broke out where this like woman was like, "I don't want my kids to be walking out of the community because we have only this small like cow fence." And this guy and they wanted to propose to build a real wall. And this guy is yelling like irate, like I didn't move to live in a prison. And I'm talking to Norman, my friend's dad, who was the co-founder of this eco village. And I'm like, Norman, man, like, how is this going to resolve? And like, he was like, it's not, like one of the, and he was right. Like one of them ended up moving on.
Well,
There's no way that both of those people are going to get what they want. And, like Stephen and Norman at the time, man, they did a lot, and they learned a lot about what it's like to even found a community. Because once the lots are sold, you become one of the lot owners. That's it. There's no like founder, like you're not the leader. You're the organizer, but then it's up to the HOA, the
yeah, and I'm
board.
sure part of the vision, you're trying to build a different way of living. I imagine most of the time people were coming in are like, okay, what's a democratic or consensus or whatever model of decision making? Because part of the concern, there's all these things people look at in city life or their life in a normal economy or a normal democracy or whatever, and they go, okay, I want something different to this, and I'm sure that includes decision making structures as well as how you work with the environment, as well as how you manage money, etc. Right?
Yeah, and I guess that's the other thing, which is like that's one format of it that especially a lot of people say, look, Costa Rica doesn't need more eco villages and retreat centers built by Americans. I have local friends who
I've
talk
heard
about
that. Yeah,
gentrification, So, and then I have local friends who are like, that's such bullshit. Like, you have foreigners who have helped this country. Like, a lot of the biggest things have come from initiatives and conservation initiatives. So, no, it's not like one way or another, but yeah, when I look at what makes a healthy community for me now, this many years later, I don't give speeches anymore on eco villages and building communities. To be honest, I was drinking a lot of Kool-Aid because I also see the reality that we have the thing that I wanted, that I saw when I came down here, and I was like, oh, I want an eco village. And it's called a town. So when you look at Costa Rican towns that are these like bioregional hubs and
Mm,
regenerative hubs, man, they have Waldorf schools and restaurants and the best classes from the best teachers, similar to Bali or other countries. So question is, what part of me was thinking that an eco village might need walls? Because at Leap Forward, we learned that like if you're talking about resilience, like if something happens in the world, ain't no wall that's going to save you. You need to learn how to be integrated with
mm,
your surroundings. So when Leap Forward moved to Costa Rica on a personal level, not to do a project, like as a group, as a company, and bought land, they bought land in a small town and started to integrate into the town and ask
mm,
questions to see, like, what
beautiful.
does the town need and where do we fit in? And and just steward land that doesn't need to be like divided and sold. And later, when I took the regenerative development course, that's what they taught. And then I introduced Bill Reed, the leader of the head of Regenesis Institute, and Ronit, because I'm like, you're both teaching me the same thing, and it's not what I thought when I left the U.S. You know, Findhorn and Oroville and Damanhor and Tamara and the best eco villages in the world are needed, and they're an example, but we also need neighborhoods. And there are people where you live and I live that can do this, 20 minutes away from where they're sitting. It's not something that is for wealthy people to
Mm.
just retire to.
Yeah, I wonder, that the story you tell of the fence, right? The dispute over the fence. It's a fine expression of when people are coming in to build somewhere like this. It's really they have these highest values. They have this idea of paradise. Like, what is the expression of these highest values look like? And I can see how
Yeah.
you get how one of your uh common patterns in your work is to kind of slow people down and calm them down. It's like, yeah, that's great, but let's check it out. But I think that's a fine expression of how different people have a different idea of what paradise is. One of those people, their highest values up there in their idea of paradise is freedom and connection, and another one's is separation from all the bad stuff. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I was, but yeah, I think that's one of the concerns or the off things that I feel about when I hear about or read about some of these eco villages is that value system of like, I do what I want and I protect that from the rest of the world and I separate
Yeah.
that from the rest of the world. Is that the future value system? You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah,
and
and
yeah,
by the way, that's that very thing that you say. It's like it's so funny because it's so paradoxical, right? Like as you're saying it,
exactly.
because it's a desire that we all want to live together in a good world, but we're closing it up. It's not to make eco villages bad either. I think they're really important. I have friends who live in just gated communities. I think it's nice for security in Latin
Mm,
America. I'm not against the fence. I'm just more for this conversation that, everyone gets so excited about the regenerative movement and this, and I'm really like, holy moly, like we are killing each other, killing ourselves, and killing the planet if you look at the news. It's not an ecological like thing happening. Like really, we're at a tipping point, especially for people our age, Frank. And I didn't ask Ryan how old he is, but it's important when I look at if I want to have kids or the next generation, what kind of world are they inheriting? Oh, great number. I have that number everywhere, by the way. 33 is Ryan's age because people can't read the chat. But
that's right.
so yeah, I think for me, Ronita asked me a question that I think is important. And yes, I'm into events and growing and all this stuff, and I'm into eco villages. But she said, now, like today, if you pause and look at the world and see, okay, what's my purpose? Why am I here? And where could I be the biggest service? I told you I'm a Ukrainian immigrant. That country's at war. I'm Jewish. Israel's at war. There's anti Semitism through the roof. I'm like, holy moly. I see ecologically fucking coral reefs, excuse my language, are collapsing. Government, education system. So the point she helped me see is zoom out. Everyone is working in silos. You have the best psychologists, the best evolutionary biologists, all these people working in silos, mostly. I'm not saying exclusively. And so,
It's an issue. I see that as one
yeah,
of the major issues. Like we're not lacking in the world in terms of access to well refined, really really good ideas, like the best ideas, like how to solve all the problems. But they're in the universities, or there's financial barriers, or there's somewhat arbitrary seeming border barriers, or class barriers, or barriers of custom and routine that mean that the good information is getting better and better and better, but it's not. The more important is that it disseminates rapidly and shifts the normal. And I've often thought about that, but how do we do that, right? Sorry, go ahead. How do we do
no, but
that?
I think it's that quote, that famous like quote of small islands of coherence, and same thing in regenerative
Right.
developments. I think it's 18% or 16% change of an ecosystem can affect what we need to do the things we need in the environment.
Hmm.
So it's all doable. But the question is, okay, if we've done, and I'm gonna, this is not my concept, so I'm just like
That's
inspired by it,
okay.
but if we brought together the brightest minds to go to the moon and do the Manhattan Project and CERN and collide particles together, why wouldn't we, do that towards the interior and bring these top scientists together? And so that's at Leap Forward, the project that captivated me the most and made me go part time at a nonprofit. I thought like maybe one day I'll be really wealthy and I could work at a nonprofit, but I am wealthy and I have time wealth, and I dedicated to support an initiative where essentially an interdisciplinary group, like a wisdom tank, a think tank,
Hmm.
is being pulled together to help people cooperate across these fields and rewire the human mind. Because essentially, the thing that sucked for me and still sucks is I have this machine in here that was wired to help me survive, and it's amazing. It's amazing because I wouldn't have survived a saber-toothed tiger attack back in the Ice Age. But now I'm not in like we have Amazon and there's no daily threats, thank God, unless you live in a place like that, which my heart goes out. But really, we're not under fight or flight survival, but we act that way as individuals. I forget, I get scarce on money. I get scarce on everything. And so, how am I supposed to live in community if I'm in scarcity and survival? How am I supposed to work in community if I'm in scarcity and survival in that sense? And so, right now, if we don't rewire the human mind, which isn't able to see threats that are far away, it's wired to see threats that are right here. Um, Man, it's not going to be very pretty because, you know, you could read the news any day. It doesn't matter AI or a war or a this. It's not the question of like which thing is going to do it. It's not to be doomy and gloomy, but yeah, we're in a real serious freaking time right now where people got to wake up and change. That change, unfortunately, takes thousands of years evolutionarily, millions of years. And so the stuff we've been doing at Leap Forward, man, I feel like I'm in kindergarten, Frank. I mean, I'm literally every day talking to a group of people. And yesterday my friend triggered me and she made me feel like my mom made me feel. And so really I got reactive, not at her, but my mother. What happens when that's Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump? And I'm working at this. We meet for Leap Forward almost every day, except weekends, for the last 5 years for me.
Wow.
I'm meeting with this group that's calling me out saying, Ed, like, you said you wanted us to pause you when you do this. And every day I get a mirror to see myself. And so that for me is a new definition of community also. People who really care about my growth, who are calling me out, and we don't even live together. Yes, we meet very often, but so I kind of went in a big circle, but yeah.
Okay, help me paint the picture of Leap Forward and what that is and what you guys do. So it sounds like
Sure.
it's a community of people who meet regularly and grow together and hold each other accountable and support and guide each other with that. But it also sounds like there's projects around interdisciplinary collaboration. So yeah, tell me a bit about the different
Sure.
actual projects and actions that make up Leap Forward.
Yeah, so just to back up a little bit, is I got introduced to Leap Forward about 5 years ago. I was part of a community called Hatch, still am. That's a lot of nonprofits and social impact entrepreneurs. And I met Ronita. I heard about her. that she's like a very well-known psychologist. But what I found fascinating about her is she took the path I dreamed of taking spiritually. She studied with Ram Dass and Thich Nhat Hanh and all these
Oh,
great
lovely.
teachers. She worked with Ken Wilber, like, basically from the background, but co-creating what is the Integral
Wow.
Institute. And was an avid learner, but was also a psychologist, trauma and crisis. And someone who studied very deeply other fields like sociology, neurology, neuropsychosocial, the whole thing, and really saw that unfortunately the change, like a lot of the spiritual teachers, the apple wasn't like the tree, and it was very hard for those teachings. And she understood why to really penetrate people and change them because we have this machine and we're wired uh, a certain way, and it's not just that you went to a Ram Dass thing and you're awakened you know? Um, oh my God, woo! So, essentially when I met her, I first saw the Leap Forward community as a group of people who essentially did personal development work. I didn't understand what it was, but there was a strong set of agreements that I had to sign. And when I joined, it was essentially agreements owning my responsibility and that if confronted, like, because I'm going to be pushed to my edge in certain ways, that like, you're cool with this, and
Mm,
to keep
mm,
your word, all of our values, integrity, we don't show up late. I mean, this is a serious set of agreements. I showed up late to the first meeting. People were really pissed at me. I showed up late in Costa Rica to meet the group, and people were like, whoa, I thought one girl was in tears. I was like, what's going on here? And they're like, we had a lot higher expectations of you, Ed Zaydelman. And I'm like, yo, I'm 20 minutes late. Pura vida, Costa Rica. And they're like, you could have let us know. Like for us, like integrity, your word really matters. And later I understood that unless you have a delay, like it's okay when we have a meeting if you type and say, hey, I'm stuck in traffic, something crazy happened. But unless it's something that's, occasionally or whatever, your word is your word. And so just really seeing just that one thing from the four agreements, impeccability with your
mm,
word.
mm,
Yeah, if you're really held to it day to day by community, at least me, I could see how many of my words were loose, vague, how wishy washy I was. And Ronit was like, is this how you want to live? And I'm like, no, like I'm a man of my words. Just like show up that way and come to one of our meetings. And, I came and I saw a group of people, black, white, and Asian, rich, poor, whatever, some extremely wealthy, some with nothing we have Muslim, Jewish, Christian, like religious, thing. Seeing beyond our differences, seeing our common humanity, and basically meeting to process our stuff. Like, what's coming up? What are you feeling? And I say, oh, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that. And we pause each other a lot to really just see what we're feeling. And during a meeting, as we all share kind of what's going on, you develop a thread of people going through different things, okay, and different areas of their growth. The only difference is normally I do it with a coach or a guru. Here, there is no guru. Ronita is brilliant and she's a guide and she helps us. She gave us a map that is essentially on the Leap Forward website that shows a lot of the human condition and loop of a fraudulent child, a child that's trapped in pain and emotions that are subdued, an adult that has grown up in a way called the fraudulent adult and the flailing child, excuse me. The fraudulent adult was me in my teen rambunctious years, becoming a skater and a bad boy to protect that wounded child. And I built up this identity and ego and thing people have talked about a lot. So when someone says something to me in a group, I see it through the lens of perception of all my childhood experiences, and I'm triggered. Maybe not, maybe I am. And so the cool thing about Leap Forward as a group is we meet and we trigger the fuck out of each other and we rub and we reflect to each other the things we need to remember. On the other side of it, Ronit's point was always that the best way to learn is in a project, like with a co-founder or whatever. The only thing is, if you're going to do a project, in our case, it's do one that'll ease suffering. So Leap Forward has projects like Heed the Children that's focused on kids off of digital devices and social media.
mm-hmm.
We have
Awesome.
trauma relief efforts in the Middle East. We do a lot of funding of mental health. We have interfaith initiatives, unity suppers that are being led by some of our members between Jews, Christians, and Muslims in really high tension areas in the US. and just areas where conflict is emerging too. So we have a lot of projects where people take up an initiative, and in that process, we see our shit come up. The other day, I brushed something under the rug. I made a mistake and I lied. I will say it here live on a podcast. It's not a big lie, but I just told people like, oh, no, no, I took care of it. And they're like, took care of what? And I was like, yes, I made a mistake updating our newsletter and I fixed it. And they were like, yeah, but you could have just told us that you did that. And so I know it might sound small, but I'm like, wow, I lied. I omitted. I saw that. It's not an egregious error. I'm not going to be crucified right now. But it's to show that, like, holy moly, how I think that I'm an honest person. I want to grow towards that. But where do I lie? In this case, where it protects my ego. Small lies, little ones. But that's just a leap forward. I realized my own organization, I do that. I lie to myself when I procrastinate on a project.
Mm.
Oh, I'm going to do that tomorrow. No, I'm not. I'm going to do that in 2 weeks. So just schedule it for 2 weeks, you're fine. But anyway, I bring this up that these are things kind of that I guess I've learned so far working on projects that leap forward and yeah, with other people.
Awesome. I'm part of a church, and that sounds like a direct approach to what I sometimes, I suppose, frustratedly yearn as the potential of what a church is or what a church could be, which is
Mm,
so I went to this like leadership thing with the Anglican community in New Zealand. Anglican's a big church in our country. Um, and there's like a new archbishop, and he grew up doing like intentional community. Well, not grew up, but he his whole journey through life was in intentional communities, leading them, participating, and um, it's called urban vision. So they it's about living in the urban world and having a base, a center there, or scattered houses through there where you're living a way of love, kingdom life, and then trying to, yeah, the highs and the lows, putting that together. And he was talking about, and I really resonated with this, the idea that kind of spiritual development and spiritual growth really occurs through, and the term in Christianity is mission, right? As in, like, it's you get
mm,
together for the sake of serving or for the sake of building this better world. And that
yeah,
is the space in which spiritual growth or discipleship in Christian language really happens, right?
beautiful.
And I that really sung to me. I was like, yeah, how else would that happen? Because then it's like, okay, I'm being challenged. I'm taking actions, stepping into a world based on my highest values. I'm being challenged because I'd rather not do that sometimes, or I've got other values that are coming in the way. But I'm in a community of people. We all value this. We bump into each other. We figure it out. And if there isn't that kind of functional, active, daily and social demand to be growing and
Yeah,
transforming, then why would it happen? What's the incentive? If it's easy to live the life
yeah.
I'm in, as the person I still am, then I'm just going to keep doing that. So that, it's amazing. This sounds like that's really the purpose that group serves. Is we're going to create a community structure, a value structure, and put us in situations, where we're trying to serve, where we're trying to create this better world. And this whole thing, being in it, is enough to demand that you grow and that you develop and that you heal all of these things that are coming up. How many people are a part of Leap Forward?
So the communities, it changes in size because sometimes people pause, leave. This
Sure.
isn't a cult. There's no fee to be part of it. It's one of the big things. Like Ronit for me was like the anti-guru. She doesn't want to be put on a pedestal. Now she's writing a book for the reason of she's getting her teachings out. She's 70 years old and she
Mm.
sees the world's in a critical place. It is not about her. It's called Dear Future Human, and it's the Substack I mentioned. And
Yeah.
it's basically a series of letters to the future of humanity in case we don't make it, explaining like what really happened. And I'll give you. I think I
That
might
sounds
have given
cool.
you guys, but at the end of the day, it's really interesting because it's like the things that we were talking about from a personal development perspective of wanting to grow and shift. Literally simple things like I was sharing with my buddy that I'd love to communicate more concisely, less voice notes at work and in general, more written communication. And so he holds me to it. And every day there's a message that he's like, Ed, that was way too long. And so unless I'm every day held to that, That's why the community part is a big part. The things that I'm studying, going slow, taking 3 breaths. I need a friend. Like we took 3 breaths before we started. And leap forward, I have my accountability buddies who are like, Ed, are you doing what you're supposed to? Like your meditations and your breathing. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Like I have someone in this journey. So that for me is a cooler community link for me than just like ecology or some one thing. I'm like, wow, there's something that ties me and Sebastian together. He gives a shit. And I check in on Sebastian. Are you okay with your new job, buddy? Are you burning out? I haven't heard from you in our community WhatsApp group, you know? And he's like, thanks for checking in. Yeah, I'm kind of burning the candle at both ends, you know, a little bit or whatever it is. That thing, whether it's rewiring or you call it friendship or you call it anything, I didn't realize that my search for personal development, gurus, enlightenment, who am I? Why am I here? All that thing that's intrinsically tied to my search for community because without each
Mm,
other, going to evolve. We are walking each other home. It's not just the saying. Like it's what we're here to do is grow and help each other grow. And for a while, we're just worried about making money. But you know, it's like once the illusions pop a little bit and we see this magical life we live in, we need each other. And unfortunately, it's not easy to do that. I still got triggered by my same buddy the other day where I'm like, enough, like stop nitpicking. And that's it. That's my wall. It's not
mhm,
enough. It's not enough. And so if somebody's not going to hold me like that, like Anne Frank, when you know, like if you don't with a stroke victim, if you don't tie down one side of them so the other side could regrow, that's what we do painstakingly, and we uncover and we peel the onion and what's below that. And mostly there are root fears. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy, and I'll end up all alone. Which in tribal times meant you were kicked out of the tribe and you would die. So in our DNA is that if I'm alone, I'm dead. It's a hard place for a child to come out of, you know, in the world. Um, we're literally fighting for survival, self-worth, all these things. So I can see it. It doesn't mean I could rewire it just because I see it.
mm,
You
mm.
know, like my parents were entrepreneur hustlers. My dad's like, you will make it in the American dream, son. And here I am, like this hippie in Costa Rica. But, you know, it's like, yeah, I have this survival and hustle. And so when I told my dad the kumbaya stuff we're doing, he's like, this is not going to work. This sounds like socialism, you know, like the Costa Rican eco village movement. He was like, just get a job, take care of yourself, you know. And so there's this fight between this old individualistic survival world and the new world that is very much like this. So, that's within me. It's not on the news. And I'm seeing all of the dark and interesting parts of me where that lives and honoring them. There's nothing wrong with it. You know?
Yeah, there's an absolute symmetry and interconnection, and you've hinted at it a few times, between that inner and that outer level. And Ryan mentioned in the chat it's a bit chicken and egg, right? Like I feel you need, and you've hinted at this, right? You need the right values coming in, you need the communication skills, you need to do some healing, et cetera, before you can successfully run, sustain, keep alive a community. But at the same time, to try to grow, to try to heal without the type of community that allows that and encourages that is also maybe a bit of a fool's game. So I just, yeah, how do we maybe you could talk a bit about how you bring your insights from these two worlds together, where you're helping people build community and you're a part of Leap
Yeah.
Forward. But how do you ensure that people have the community to grow when you're on that side, but at the same time have the growth to do community when you're trying to lead people through this? How do you navigate it? Those
Mm.
things have to both be happening.
It was funny because I told Ronit that like when I started consulting, my dream was to make just enough money to make sure I could sustain myself and anyone dependent on me, but really dedicate some years to focus on me. I had a lot of stuff. I had a divorce. I had like very difficult things with my dad happen. I said, look, I want to like dedicate some years to my healing. And so Ronit said, cool, like do as much consulting as you need to do and do the leap forward stuff in the other time. And so I did, and I noticed that they did intertwine together because the main thing that Leap Forward has taught me is to more and more be authentically me and speak truth, no matter how hard it is. You know, like Ronit's role models are Gandhi and Socrates and Mandela, and you know, these people drank hemlock and died for what they believed in, and MLK. So I tell people really harsh truth like, hey, we are not ready unless you bring in like the best experts in invisible structures and human coherence. And you really want to work on this with a group of people, maybe in a piece of land. Like we are not there yet. So to accept that we don't know yet how to do this, and instead of people saying they're experts, including myself on building eco villages, we need to be in the unknown together and say, look, we're all trying to do something that doesn't exist. So let's be honest here. Let's practice. Let's do workshops on coherence. We've trained people before on how to do stuff. So I bring it into my work by being honest with people about what's really like reality, and also be honest with them with what impact they'll make with what they're doing. They might make more impact building themselves a house and really, you know, focusing on their gift or their craft and live in an eco village, not build one. It doesn't, so one of the things I think I bring them is that part, and the other is in Leap Forward I get trained on how to work on complex projects with teams of people, and so that's helped me like a ton in my work. I've told Ronit because I manage sometimes enormous teams of people. For me, 40, 50 people, 1,000-acre projects down to little ones, it doesn't matter. But at any given time I'm working with a lot of people, and it's not really a sweat for me in a way. It's not a sweat because it's like that's the gym that I go to. Like I do
Mm.
go to the other gym. I should go more. It's on my this week's like it start to pump more. I run, but I want to do a little more weight. But in the mental gym, that's what I've been training, how to work in a group of people. I don't nail it. We fuck up. Communication gets messed up. Biggest issue is communication. What are you gonna do by when is a really hard thing to nail in any company. And so in Leap Forward, we've been drilled at like certain processes. So I bring that to my work, and it's unreal. Like what happens when a whole team and there's a field of energy that's coherent. There's trust. There's good, transparent communication. Sally isn't behind Molly's back doing this. Everything's copacetic. So, I think learning how to just work with other people is the biggest thing I've learned, because I can smell when something's off. The whole thing about building in Regenesis, they call it the field. But if you're doing a project, Frank, Ryan, Ed, and there's an architect and there's whoever, the field of energy between those people is important. And if there's one egg that doesn't fit, I don't want to say bad egg, it's going to be off. And so a lot of my work is to understand that field and say, like, who do we need and who's in resonance? Like, wow, that architect is cool, but I don't feel them. I don't feel their soul. I don't feel a person who I want to be in a meeting with every day.
Mm.
Do you? And they're like, no. And I'm like, then this isn't going to work for the next 7 years. The most important thing is not how good the architect is or all this. The team has to be in deep coherence. And it sucks because I see sometimes two partners or a husband and wife, and I'm like, ooh, you know? And so I bring up really tough shit. I'm like, your investors got to go. I don't say it like that, but I'm like, this isn't working. You can feel that. Like, there's a mismatch. You mentioned it. So, yeah, just learning to be honest and not hold back. I didn't know that when I was younger.
People get so attached to finding or building that place where everything's going to be good and everything's going to be okay, that we're willing to put aside in moments, suppress, deny our values or those things that are looking right at us, in the hopes that, okay, if we can just get past all that and get to this good
Yeah.
place, this good idea, then it's all good. But it matters so much how you get there. I mean, you think of like, there's so much on like social media now, um, kind of speaking to this yearning that people express through these projects to escape the noise and the chaos of modern life and live peacefully and quiet afternoons and being in the outdoors and all of that. And people, I think people see all of this and they get caught up and they go, oh, okay, so if I follow this person, or I have a garden like this, or I have this interior design style, or if I do this or if I
Yeah.
do that, then I'm going to have the peaceful quiet afternoons. But actually the peaceful quiet afternoons, or the warm happy vibes with your community or your family, comes from the stuff that you don't want to think about. And these like these things that we latch onto, oh, this person's really smart, or we just need the money, we need the right place, all of these material superficial things, we go so hard on that. because maybe it's actually because the idea it's too scary. Because then, what if we're bad? What if we get rejected? That's so uncomfortable to say we're not going to work together because of all these childhood fears. So that's too
Yeah.
scary to look at. Let's focus on the stuff that actually isn't going to make the difference. You're just gonna build this world. You're going to put so much effort into it, but the values are wrong or the relationships are wrong, and it's all going to fall apart. Eh?
Yeah, and one thing I just will touch briefly that you said earlier is I stopped going to as many of the conferences and things that I was going to because I saw a lot of people, including myself. I was just bullshitting and talking about the problem and future solutions. But to be honest, like there's so much people talking about what's wrong in the world and so few people taking action, you
Mm.
know? That I had to pause for a little bit, even with all the reading and personal development. It felt like all in order too. Like I'm trying to become this uber enlightened. I paused and I'm just like, how do I act like a good person and not be a dick, and
Yeah.
treat my
Oh my
neighbor
gosh.
well and I don't
Yeah,
know.
I
And
think we
so
we it's the same thing. I've been using this metaphor in conversation recently. Like it's like we're on a boat and it's sinking. It's full of holes, and we're focusing as hard as we can on upgrading the mast and the rotor and it's just settle down and focus on the problem, resolve, and that's work as well, right? It's not as exciting. You're looking through the magazine, all the new parts. You're talking about how fast we're going to go, where are we going to get. It's like it's not as much of a good time to be scooping out the water every day, to be going to the dark bits and patching up. Like that's it's not as fun. but it's the
there's
real
that
but it's the
quote.
real work.
Yeah, what do you call it? Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
Yeah, yeah. I think the modern is the laundry. Um before
Yeah.
enlightenment the laundry, after enlightenment the laundry. Um yeah, yeah. No, that's awesome, man. We're sort of coming close to the end of our time, but I just want to try to
Sure.
capture some sort of wrap up insights. The first thing I want to get to is what is the hope here, like with Leap Forward, or maybe your hope. You're putting all of this effort daily with these conversations in this community. How can I shift my ways of responding, my ways of communicating, et cetera, et cetera? You're thinking about these alternate villages. What what do you want to happen? What is the future that you see, that you get excited about, that you think might be possible based on what you encounter every day in this work?
Sure, I guess I'll answer that in kind of a me and a we way. First, like
Go for
me
it.
personally as a human is I'm really curious what happens when I remove the layers that block my light and all these pains and wounds, and when the light that lives in me, I'm really curious what that looks like when totally unleashed, what I can do in the world, how I can be with others. So for me, I'm excited. I'm just like I was a philosophy major in college. I'm just a constant student of life, and I'm eager to learn. I see it all as a school. So my hope is to learn and grow and evolve and share my gifts with the world. For the world itself, my hope is that we can learn how to live together. And I think we're in the most exciting time in human history when there's enough pressure on an organism, it can evolve, and our organism is being pressured to evolve. And so I hope that we can evolve to care for each other, to care for the planet, to not be limited by our lenses of perception. And while I'm alive, I hope I can ease some suffering on the world, make it a better place. So much of my life has been capitalism and entrepreneurship and all this stuff. Like, yeah, I really enjoy gardening and being in this wonderful nature that I'm in. It's going to take some work to maintain that. I can't just live in Costa Rica in a silo. So, yeah, while here and on this mud ball, like I want to make a dent. And so that's what I hope. That's it. And yeah, I don't know. I think that's it. I just really care. Like I love people, and I hope we can care for each other better. Mm. No, I would just say one thing: get hyper clear on what is your vision, the what, get hyper clear on your mission, how you will execute that vision, and a plan of action to step into the execution of that. So clarity, really hone in on what's your vision, hone in on your legacy, and have a plan to execute it. Uh, it's the beginning of any project until you have that super clarity of vision. And I mean clarity, not like I have people who are like, Ed, I took ayahuasca and I think the world needs to be more unified. And I'm going to build an eco village with my 10 million from my crypto startup. And I'm like, oh my God. And let me guess, you want a network of these villages and you want a passport between them. And he's like, oh my God, were you in my dream? And I'm like, no, dude, we're all getting the same download. Figure out what's your unique part of it. Are you a plumber? Are you a visionary? So, you know, have your vision clear, have your mission. You know, I see this for the world and this is how I see it happening. And this is the steps that I need. You can't get somewhere unless you know where you are and where you're going. So having your map and a lay of the land is critical. That's most of my work is just mapping that stuff out with people. Pleasure. Pleasure. Absolutely. And I'll share with you guys, but the Substack where I share stuff, I write a newsletter. Like most of my stuff that I people pay me a lot of money for, I give away for free. So people can follow that and very happy to share all this. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, for anyone who's interested in the whole New Earth building, eco villages, retreat centers, that's livethepossibility.news. That's the newsletter and interviews I do with tons of people who are building these projects, real practical wisdom for free. Um, and Leap Forward's website is leapforward.us. There's a map of being there that's amazing. It's such a rich website of info. So, you could scour it. And I mentioned the book, Dear Future Human. That's a Substack page. It's also linked in Leap Forward, and I'll link it here. But that's really awesome. And like, I wish I knew some of this stuff earlier, and the fact that it's being written about for free online, vis-a-vis Ronit's letters, it's some of the best work at Leap Forward for the first time public, because Leap Forward is not a public group, let's say. So this is the best of what I've learned for years, just being offered in these letters and soon tools, with no economic engine or intention, you know. So people could just consume that. No pitch here. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Mindform podcast. I'm Ryan A. Bush, founder and author of Designing the Mind and creator of Mindform. Mindform is an exclusive community and training platform for sculpting your psychological software. Members get access to a group of like-minded psychotechs, including all of our guests on this podcast, gamified growth tools, events and retreats, and a collection of transformative programs for mental health and self-mastery. You can learn more and apply to join at mindform.io/podcast. I hope to see you inside.